The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Silver Creek, as Sophia Anderson stumbled from the smoking ruins of her father's bakery, her hands wrapped in blood-soaked rags. The smell of burned timber hung in the air, mixing with the lingering scent of charred bread and the unmistakable metallic tang of blood. Her entire life had gone up in flames overnight, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and hands so badly burned she could barely move her fingers. Silver Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1878, was no place for a woman alone, especially one who could no longer work with her hands. At 22, Sophia had learned early that survival in the West meant being useful, and now she feared she was anything but. Her father had passed just 3 months prior, leaving her the bakery that had been their livelihood. Now that too was gone. "Miss Anderson," Mrs. Halloway called from across the street. The older woman hurried over, her face pinched with concern. "My dear girl, you need a doctor for those hands." Sophia shook her head, tucking her bandaged hands behind her back. "I'm fine, Mrs. Halloway, just some minor burns." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. The pain was excruciating, radiating up her arms in waves of agony. "Nonsense. I saw you pull those children from the flames myself. Now come along, Doc Wilson will know what to do." The fire had started in the dead of night. Sophia had awakened to the crackling of flames and choking smoke. She'd barely escaped herself, but then heard the screams. The Campbell family lived in the rooms above the adjacent general store, and their 2 young children had been trapped. Without thinking, Sophia had rushed back into the inferno, finding the children huddled under a bed. She'd grabbed them, one under each arm, but the doorway had collapsed in flames as she approached it. With no choice, she'd pushed through, the fire licking at her hands and arms as she shielded the children with her body. Now, as Mrs. Halloway led her down the street, Sophia felt the stares of townsfolk watching her pass. She kept her gaze down, humiliation burning as fiercely as her wounds. A woman who couldn't work wasn't worth much in Silver Creek. Doc Wilson's examination was brief and his prognosis grim. "These are 3rd-degree burns, Miss Anderson. I'll clean and dress them as best I can, but—" He shook his head. "You may never regain full use of your hands." The words hit her like a physical blow. "But I'm a baker," she whispered. "It's all I know." "I'm sorry," the doctor said, his kind eyes reflecting pity she couldn't bear to see. "You're young, you'll find another way." But what other way was there? Women in Silver Creek had limited options. She could teach, but the town already had a schoolmarm. She could work in the saloon, but her father had raised her with principles that wouldn't allow it. Marriage was an option for some women, but Sophia had never been considered a beauty, and now with damaged hands. Days passed in a blur of pain and uncertainty. Mrs. Halloway had taken her in temporarily, but Sophia knew she couldn't impose forever. The community had raised some money for the fire victims, but it was barely enough to survive a few weeks. Each morning, she changed her bandages, wincing at the raw, blistered flesh beneath. Each night, she lay awake wondering what would become of her. 1 week after the fire, she was sitting on Mrs. Halloway's porch, staring at nothing, when the sound of approaching hooves drew her attention. A stranger rode into town, dust swirling around his horse's hooves. He was tall in the saddle, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Something about the way he carried himself made her watch him longer than she might have otherwise. He dismounted outside the general store, speaking briefly with Mr. Thompson, who gestured in the direction of the burned buildings. The stranger nodded and walked toward what remained of her father's bakery. Curious despite herself, Sophia rose and followed him, keeping her distance. The man circled the charred foundation, occasionally kneeling to examine the debris. When he finally noticed her watching, he straightened and removed his hat in a gesture of respect. "Madam," he called. "This your property?" Sophia approached cautiously, keeping her bandaged hands behind her. "It was my father's bakery. I'm Sophia Anderson," he nodded, extending his hand before noticing how she held herself. "Nathan Jenkins, I'm sorry about your loss." His eyes, a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin, held no pity, just a straightforward assessment that made her stand taller. "Are you passing through, Mr. Jenkins? Planning to stay a while, actually." He gestured to the building. "Thompson tells me you saved 2 children from the fire." Heat rose to her cheeks. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone," he countered, his gaze dropping to where she hid her hands. "May I ask what the doctor said about your injuries?" Sophia hesitated, then slowly brought her bandaged hands forward. "That I may never bake again," she admitted, hating the tremor in her voice. Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "My sister burned her hands when we were kids, bad like yours. Everyone said she'd be crippled for life." He smiled slightly. "She's a seamstress now, best in 3 counties. Hope flickered briefly before Sophia tamped it down. "Is that why you're here? You have a sister in Silver Creek." "No, madam. I'm here because I heard this town needed a new bakery and I happen to need a new start." He gestured to the burned-out shell of the building. "I've got some savings and skills with carpentry. Was going to see about rebuilding and starting my own place, but Mr. Thompson says you're the baker in these parts." "Was," she corrected bitterly. "I was the baker." Nathan studied her for a long moment. "Way I see it, Miss Anderson, you've still got the knowledge up here." He tapped his temple. "And I've got working hands but couldn't bake a decent loaf to save my life." Understanding dawned slowly. "Are you suggesting we work together?" "More of a partnership," he said. "You tell me how to do it, I do the physical work, and we split the profits." "Once we get this place rebuilt, that is." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "Why would you do that? You don't know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know this town respects you. I know you ran into a burning building to save children who weren't your own. And I know a thing or two about starting over." His eyes held something, a knowledge of loss that mirrored her own. Before she could respond, Mrs. Halloway called her name, summoning her back to the house. Sophia excused herself, promising to consider his offer. That evening, she couldn't stop thinking about Nathan Jenkins. His proposal seemed too good to be true, and in Sophia's experience, such things usually were. Yet there was something solid about him, something trustworthy in those blue eyes that had seen their share of hardship. The next morning, she found him at the site of the bakery again, this time with measuring tools and paper, sketching out plans. When he saw her approaching, he stood, dusting off his hands. "Morning, Miss Anderson. Thought I'd get an early start." "I haven't agreed to your proposal yet, Mr. Jenkins," he grinned, the expression transforming his serious face. "No, but you will. It makes good sense for both of us." His confidence was both irritating and oddly comforting. "Tell me why you really came to Silver Creek," she challenged. "There are plenty of towns that need bakers." Nathan considered her for a moment, then gestured to a relatively intact bench near the ruins. After they sat, he removed his hat and ran a hand through dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. "I was a rancher down in Texas," he began. "Had a small spread, nothing fancy. Wife and I worked it together for 5 years, then came the drought and then came the fever." His voice remained steady, but his eyes darkened with memory. "Lost her and our baby boy within a week of each other." "I'm sorry," Sophia whispered, understanding now the shadow of grief she'd recognized in him. He nodded acknowledgement. "Sold what was left of the ranch and drifted for a while. Took odd jobs. Realized I needed purpose again." He looked at the burned bakery. "When I heard about this place, something just felt right." His honesty deserved her own. "My hands," she said, slowly unwrapping the bandages to reveal the raw, blistered skin beneath. "They hurt all the time. The doctor says the pain may never completely go away." Nathan didn't flinch at the sight. Instead, he looked at her hands with respectful attention. "My offer stands. You've got the knowledge, I've got the strength. Together, we might make something good." Something in his calm confidence made her believe it might be possible. "All right, Mr. Jenkins. Let's rebuild the bakery together." The work began immediately. Nathan had savings, but not enough to rebuild the entire bakery. The town council, grateful for Sophia's heroism, contributed lumber from the sawmill. Other townspeople offered labor, tools, and furnishings. Within a week, the foundation was cleared and new construction had begun. Sophia discovered that Nathan was as good as his word. He listened intently as she explained the layout the bakery would need, where the ovens should go, how large the preparation tables needed to be, where to place windows for the best light and ventilation. He wrote everything down, made detailed drawings, and consulted her on every decision. During the rebuilding, they fell into a comfortable routine. Each morning, Sophia would arrive at the construction site with coffee and whatever breakfast she'd managed to prepare with her limited dexterity. Nathan would already be working, usually shirtless in the early hours before the day grew too hot, his muscles moving smoothly as he lifted and positioned lumber. She tried not to notice how the sun brought out auburn highlights in his dark hair, or how his smile seemed to come more readily with each passing day. As the structure took shape, so did their friendship. Nathan was a good listener, drawing out stories of her childhood in the bakery, her father's recipes, her dreams of expanding the business someday. In turn, he shared tales of his ranch in Texas, the horses he'd raised, the life he'd built and lost. 3 weeks into construction, Sophia arrived to find Nathan installing the massive bread ovens that had been delivered by wagon the previous evening. Her breath caught at the sight. The new bakery was twice the size of the original, with large windows to let in light and a covered porch where customers could sit. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Nathan turned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Just wait until you see the inside. Got something special to show you." He led her through the main shop area to a room at the back she hadn't seen before. It was small but bright, with a desk positioned near a window overlooking a small garden plot he'd cleared. "This is your office," he explained, "where you can keep the books, plan menus, and direct operations without having to be on your feet all day." The thoughtfulness of it, the recognition that she would need to work differently now, brought tears to her eyes. "Nathan, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll teach me how to make that cinnamon bread everyone keeps talking about." His smile was gentle. "Your father's recipe, right?" She nodded, swallowing against the tightness in her throat. It was his specialty. The whole town would line up on Saturdays when he made it. "Then that's where we'll start when we open. 1 week from today, if all goes well with the final touches." As the grand reopening approached, Sophia's anxiety grew. Her hands were healing slowly. She could move her fingers now without excruciating pain, but fine motor control remained difficult. What if she couldn't teach Nathan properly? What if the townspeople rejected their partnership? What if the business failed and he regretted his decision to help her? The night before the reopening, she sat alone on the porch of Mrs. Halloway's house, flexing her damaged hands and fighting tears of frustration. The sound of boots on the wooden steps made her quickly wipe her eyes. "Thought I might find you here," Nathan said, settling beside her on the porch swing. "Nervous about tomorrow, terrified," she admitted. "What if this doesn't work? What if I can't do enough to earn my keep?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, looking out at the star-filled sky. "When I lost everything," he finally said, "I thought my life was over. Couldn't see any path forward, just put one foot in front of the other because I didn't know what else to do." He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the lamplight spilling from the house windows. "But life has a way of offering second chances when you least expect them. Meeting you, building this bakery together, it's given me purpose again. No matter what happens tomorrow, that's worth something." His words calmed her racing thoughts. "You've given me a second chance too," she said softly. "Then we're even." He stood, offering his hand. "Come on, I want to show you something at the bakery." Curious, Sophia followed him through the quiet streets to their new building. Inside, everything was ready for tomorrow's opening, counters polished, display cases assembled, ingredients stocked in the pantry. Nathan lit a lamp and led her to the kitchen, where something new had been installed since she'd left that afternoon. It was a set of specialized tools, spatulas, spoons, and rolling pins with custom handles designed to be gripped with minimal finger dexterity. I had the blacksmith make them, Nathan explained, based on what my sister used when she was recovering. They might help, at least until your hands heal more. Sophia picked up one of the tools, marveling at how easily she could hold it despite her injuries. You did this for me, for us, he corrected gently. This is our bakery now, and I meant what I said about a partnership. Your hands may be healing, but they'll never have to work alone again. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition that their arrangement had grown beyond mere convenience or business. Nathan stepped closer, his gaze dropping to her bandaged hands. May I? He asked softly. When she nodded, he carefully took her hands in his, turning them palm up. With gentle fingers, he unwrapped the bandages, revealing the healing burns beneath. The skin was still red and puckered in places, crisscrossed with scars that would never fully fade. Sophia fought the urge to pull away to hide the damage, but Nathan held her gaze as he lowered his head and pressed his lips to her palm, first the right, then the left, a gesture so tender it stole her breath. These hands saved lives, he murmured against her skin. They're beautiful to me. Tears spilled down her cheeks as something tight and painful inside her chest finally released. Nathan drew her into his arms, holding her as she cried for her father, for her old life, for the pain she'd endured, and perhaps most of all for the unexpected hope she'd found. When she finally pulled back, Nathan's eyes were suspiciously bright as well. We should get some rest, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Big day tomorrow. That night, Sophia slept peacefully for the first time since the fire. The reopening of Anderson's bakery was a triumph beyond their expectations. The entire town turned out, forming a line that stretched down the street. Nathan worked the ovens with skill that surprised even Sophia, following her directions exactly. Her father's cinnamon bread sold out within an hour, and by midday, nearly everything was gone as the crowd thinned. Sophia noticed Nathan watching her from across the shop, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. When the last customer departed, he flipped the sign to closed and approached her desk. I think we can call that a success, he said, the understatement making her laugh. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied, flexing her hands. They ached from the day's work, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from accomplishment rather than injury. Partners, remember? He leaned against her desk. Although I'm thinking we might need to hire some help if business stays this busy. The following weeks fell into a pleasant rhythm. They opened the bakery at dawn, worked side by side through the morning rush, and spent afternoons planning new offerings or attending to bookkeeping. Nathan proved a quick study, mastering even the most complicated of Sophia's recipes with her guidance. As summer deepened into autumn, their partnership evolved in ways neither had anticipated. Nathan began escorting Sophia home each evening, their walks growing longer as they found more to discuss. Sometimes they'd stop at the small town park, sitting on a bench until the stars emerged. He told her about the constellations his father had taught him to recognize, while she shared stories of growing up as the baker's daughter, flour always under her fingernails. One crisp October evening, as golden leaves drifted around them during their walk home, Nathan seemed uncharacteristically nervous. Everything all right? Sophia asked when he fell silent for the third time after starting a sentence. He stopped walking, turning to face her. I've been thinking about our arrangement, her heart stuttered. What about it? It's working well, the partnership. He removed his hat, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign he was about to say something important. But I find myself wanting more. Sophia's mouth went dry. More. I never expected to feel this way again after losing Elizabeth, he said quietly. Didn't think I had it in me, but these past months with you. He took a deep breath. I'm falling in love with you, Sophia. Have been since the day you first showed me your burned hands and still talked about baking like it was the most important thing in the world. Joy bloomed in her chest, but uncertainty followed close behind. Nathan, my hands are part of you, he interrupted gently. And I love all of you, your determination, your kindness, your strength. The way you remember every customer's name and favorite bread, the little hum you make when you're pleased with how a recipe turned out. He took her hands in his thumbs gently caressing the scars. I know it hasn't been long, and if you need time, I understand, but I wanted you to know how I feel. Sophia looked down at their joined hands, his strong and capable, hers marked forever by that night of fire and courage. I've been afraid, she admitted. Afraid that no one would want me like this, afraid of depending on someone else. And now, she met his gaze, finding nothing but warmth there. Now I'm thinking that depending on each other might be the best kind of strength. The smile that spread across Nathan's face was like sunrise. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Sophia responded, her hands finding their way to his shoulders. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. Does this mean you might consider becoming Mrs. Jenkins someday? Not right away, he hastened to add. Just someday. Sophia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I think I might be persuaded, Mr. Jenkins, especially if you keep kissing me like that. Their courtship progressed through the winter months, bringing joy to a season Sophia had feared would be difficult. The bakery thrived, and with Nathan's encouragement, she began using her specialized tools to work alongside him more and more. By spring, she could form simple loaves herself, though the intricate pastries remained beyond her capabilities. They married on a perfect May morning in 1879, exactly 1 year after Nathan had ridden into Silver Creek. The ceremony was held in the town church, followed by a celebration at the bakery, which they closed for the day. Every surface was covered with breads and pastries they had baked together, including her father's famous cinnamon bread, which Sophia had recently managed to shape with her own hands for the first time since the fire. As evening fell and the last guests departed, Nathan locked the bakery door and turned to his bride with a mischievous smile. I have a surprise for you, Mrs. Jenkins. From behind the counter, he produced a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a delicate gold locket. It's beautiful, Sophia whispered as he fastened it around her neck. Open it, he urged. Inside was a tiny portrait of her father on one side. On the other was a miniature sketch of the bakery. How did you? Mrs. Halloway had a photograph of your father. And I commissioned the artist who passes through town every spring to do the sketch of the bakery. He touched the locket gently where it rested against her collarbone. Your past and our future together in one place. Tears of happiness filled her eyes. I love you, Nathan Jenkins. And I love you, Sophia Jenkins. He took her scarred hands in his and pressed them to his heart. These hands may have been burned, but they saved lives that night. Now they help create something that brings joy to this town every day. He kissed her palms gently. And as long as I live, they'll never work alone again. 5 years later, the bakery had expanded to include a small cafe and a delivery service to neighboring towns. Sophia's hands had healed as much as they ever would, leaving her with limited dexterity but enough function to work alongside Nathan and their 2 employees. The pain was manageable now, just an occasional reminder of that night. On a warm summer morning, Sophia stood at the bakery window, watching Nathan across the street. He was kneeling beside their 3-year-old daughter, Emma, showing her how to pet the neighbor's new puppy. The little girl's delighted laughter carried through the open door, making Sophia smile. Emma had her father's blue eyes and her mother's determination. Already she wanted to help in the bakery, standing on a stool to watch the mixing and kneading with rapt attention. Nathan had made her tiny versions of Sophia's specialized tools, and the child proudly mimicked her parents' movements. As she watched them cross the street toward the bakery, Sophia rubbed her scarred hands absently, remembering the night that had changed everything. The fire had taken much from her, but it had also, improbably, given her a new life, one filled with more love and purpose than she could have imagined in those dark days after the tragedy. Nathan entered with Emma on his shoulders, the little girl clutching a wildflower she'd picked. For you, Mama." She announced proudly. Sophia accepted the slightly crushed daisy with a serious nod. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, thank you." Nathan set their daughter down and came to stand beside his wife at the window. "Penny, for your thoughts." "I was just thinking about how differently things might have turned out." She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "If you hadn't ridden into town that day. But I did." He wrapped an arm around her waist. "And found exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know I was looking for it." Sophia turned to face him, raising her scarred hands to frame his beloved face. "Thank you for keeping your promise." Nathan smiled, understanding immediately. "Always," he said, kissing her palms as he had that first night in the bakery. "Your hands will never work alone as long as I'm here." Emma tugged at her father's pant leg. "Story time, you promised." Nathan swung the child up into his arms. "So I did, little one." "Which story would you like tonight?" "The one about Mama saving the children from the fire." It was her favorite tale, though they kept the details appropriate for young ears. Later that evening, after Emma was asleep, Sophia and Nathan sat on the porch of their home, a small house they'd built behind the bakery. The stars were bright overhead, crickets singing in the grass. "Happy?" Nathan asked, his fingers intertwined with hers. Sophia looked at their joined hands, his strong and steady, hers marked by sacrifice. Together, they had built something beautiful from the ashes of loss. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, and leaned in to kiss the man who had taught her that damaged didn't mean broken, and that the most unexpected partnerships could turn out to be the greatest blessings of all.